All right. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety podcast. I am Charlie. This is episode 91, and I'm sitting with Libby today, who was on the podcast a couple episodes ago and told her story. She's going to be joining the podcast as another new host. She did her first interview this week. Who was that with, Libby?
Yeah, that was with Noah. He had an experience getting in over his head on the feel freeze, and he tells us all about his experience with the detox. It was like a 14-day detox or something crazy like that. Yeah, how he clawed his way out. Really cool story.
Yeah, when we interviewed Scott Carney, who did the expose on that product, we played a clip from Noah, who did a testimony on Scott's YouTube channel about that experience. Well, how's it going for you, Libby? How many months has it been now since you quit?
It's been a little over 3 months since I quit. That was June 10th. Doing really well, feeling really good, feeling better than I ever felt on Kratom. Super grateful to be on the other side of things.
So around 90 days, do you think you're back to your baseline, or do you have any lingering withdrawal symptoms or maybe pause?
No, thanks to the Ibogaine, I haven't experienced any pause. After the 2-week mark, I was pretty much good to go. I mean, there was still some getting my footing, I would say, but otherwise, I'm feeling really, really good. I'm feeling really grateful.
You emailed me after your episode and said that you were interested in some service opportunities, and I just want to thank you. We need all the help we can get. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of the podcast, so thank you for responding to that. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to follow up with your episode was earlier we had a guest on who talked about their psychedelic experience. I think they might have went to Canada. I can't remember if I got my details right. I think they took iboga, which is different than Ibogaine. And I was just wondering if you could, as a newbie, as somebody that doesn't know about this stuff, if you could explain the difference between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ibogaine is one alkaloid in the plant of iboga. So iboga is the plant. It's a root shrub out of West Africa. They extract the alkaloid of ibogaine, and that's really what does the work alleviating the withdrawal symptoms and the reprogramming and rewiring of the receptors. So kind of different experiences. They say that ibogaine is to vitamin C as iboga would be to the orange.
Oh, interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it's one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, you can take the whole plant and there's other alkaloids and they have an entourage effect. But if you're trying to beat addiction, you really just want the pure ibogaine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any lingering effects from your experience specifically?
No, just the benefits of all the motivation, inspiration. I feel more connected spiritually and tons of gratitude. Carries over for me, at least.
Any cravings?
I had a week where I was experiencing some pretty heavy personal stuff, stuff going on in my personal life. I did have cravings that week, but I find those to be more psychological than they were physiological, if that makes sense. So, I didn't think that they were coming from wirings in my brain or old behaviors. I thought that was just I'm going through a tough time and I know how to solve this, and I white knuckled it for that week and got lots of support. But after that kind of all calmed down, I feel absolutely no desire. None.
Well, I'm glad we were able to share your experience with our listeners, and it's another option. I mean, I think there is some barriers to accessing this treatment. Obviously, you have to do international travel if you're going to do it under a supervised, not under the table row kind of thing. And then there is some expense too. And it's probably not for everybody, but I think it is another tool, another pathway for people.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up because I would definitely recommend against anyone trying to obtain ibogaine black market and doing it on their own. I had to undergo an EKG and an echo and making sure all of my blood panels were good, my liver enzymes, all the things were really healthy because it does have contraindications and it's not necessarily a safe shot. So if you don't know what you're doing, you really want to be working with a provider that knows the plant and knows your history and knows that you're healthy. And I can't underscore that enough. It's so important that there is a barrier to it. It is expensive. You do have to leave the country, and having gone down other routes and done all of the MAT and the treatment and the detoxes and things like that in the past for other types of opiate problems. If I had to do it again, I would do it again with ibogaine.
I'll put in the show notes. I found an article a couple of months ago when we had our first guest, an academic article that looked at some of the counterindications and kind of did a formal assessment. And it shows a lot of promise, but there are some risk factors, especially around the heart, I believe. So I'll share that with the listeners. So you do want to be cautious, but it has promise. I know that you're doing some other meetings and stuff. What else are you doing to support your recovery?
A lot of the things I'm doing are like ground community. Like I want in-person community, whether that's substance support or not. I'm focusing on a bunch of women's circles and just building community for myself here in LA so that I have reliable people to rely on when things get tough. But also I like to go to the Quitting Kratom meetings and the Dharma recovery meetings. So those are my support systems.
Yeah, that's a good lesson for me. I actually, after the pandemic, I never really went back to in-person meetings. There was a Friday night meeting a couple towns over that I'd go to. I made it there like 6-8 times over a couple of years. So I'd go to the online meetings. So I moved to a new city. So I don't know anybody here. So one way to meet new people is AA or whatever 12 steps. There's Dharma, there's Refuge, there's women's groups, there's all sorts of other, whatever your community is. But I do think, and we've done this in an intro before, there is a lot of value in person, one-on-ones, the meeting after the meeting. I mean, it's very convenient online, but there is something about going in person.
Yeah, you just can't beat it. I mean, I do find the most supportive recovery community in the Quitting Kratom groups, even though they're all online. But when you can find that support in person, it's so much different. I think it's so much more supportive.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someday there'll be in-person Kratom meetings. The bad news, if there is, that means the problem's growing and it's widespread enough that it warrants in-person meetings in localities. But the good news about that is people have more support options. So it's good. In the meantime, we have the online meetings. Well, I think that's it for your first opening. And we're excited to hear your interview with Noah.
Thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Libby. This is the Kratom Sobriety podcast, and I'm here with Noah today, and I'll have Noah introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Noah Joseph Urbina. I'm 41 years old, live in Southern California in Pasadena, lifelong California boy. I suppose I'm just here to tell my story about Kratom, concentrate specifically, but Kratom generally.
So when did you quit Kratom?
2022 is when I had my first quit. I would call it. I did have a relapse in 2024 on my soberversary, which was a more common thing than I understood at the time. But yeah, my big quit was in 2022.
How did you first get introduced to Kratom?
In probably 2016 is when I first heard about it, and I don't like the term biohacker given what it has turned into these days, but for my whole adult life, I've been dabbling in whether it's legal substance, any amount of substance, anything I could get to try to, whether it's improve the human machine or worse than that, alter my consciousness in some sort of a way since I was 18. And so learning about Kratom, I don't know the origin of how I found out about it, but it has been a long time that I've known about it and many years that I used it without any sort of an issue until 2020. Even in like 2017, I advocated for its legality. After that documentary, A Leaf of Faith, came out, I had never had any issues with it. I used it reasonably, meaningfully, and I just didn't believe even the horror stories that I had heard then, because there were horror stories then, but it wasn't my experience. And so I didn't see what all the hubbub was about. And let's just say things have changed now.
Yeah, definitely. Did you get it from a head shop? Did you order it from the internet? Do you remember the first time you used it or your experience around that?
Yeah, back in the day, likely from something like a head shop, sure. I mean, they were some of the early adopters as far as being able to get it publicly. Yeah, and it was always just the ground up powders before they were even putting it in pills or anything like that. They got all those fun names for it, and I was playing with what name does what and that sort of stuff. But yeah, head shops
How were you using it? Like, what type of kratom product were you using?
Just the powder, and I would just take 1 level tablespoon, mix it up with water, and it's notorious for how bad it tastes. And yeah, it's bad, but I mean, I joke around all the time that nobody really likes coffee. Like, come on, if you don't have caffeine in it, who's really just enjoying it as a treat? And so, you mix it up, mix it up with some water. It was just a nice little mood booster at the time without the kind of frantic panic that comes with drinking coffee.
And you don't have a history of other types of substance abuse?
Long history, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean from the moment I turned 18 and more so a little bit after that, I've been an athlete my whole life, and I got hurt when I was 18 playing basketball, and that's all I ever thought I was going to do. And so that ended up opening my world to mind-altering substances at age 18, and it didn't stop for over 20 years.
Okay. Was this the first physical dependency you'd experienced?
No, not necessarily. It was the most extreme, but no, it wasn't the first. I mean, I smoked cannabis absolutely heinously for 15 years, and I hear the argument all the time that somehow you cannot create a dependency with it, and that it is mostly mental, and that's a fair argument. But of course, there are physical withdrawal symptoms of something like that leaving your body. Just because it's lesser doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But no, I mean, I took anything I could get regularly, but nothing was as brutal as withdrawing from kratom.
Yeah, for sure. So long history of substance abuse, came across kratom. What happened to make you want to quit it?
I think that for most people, you hit this wall where you know that you've been like pre-considering the quit for a while, and there are these symptoms along the way, both during the addiction and during things like tapering, and that are like early stages of withdrawal. I reached this wall where I had already lost about 30 or 40 pounds from taking it. And to me, I looked like death incarnate. But I started to have these broken capillaries show up on my nose and red things going on in my face. And mind you, my skin was already just like ashen and dusty and hair falling out. And for whatever reason, we're able to turn a blind eye to some of the stuff that happens gradually and slowly and attribute it to other things. But as soon as it started manifesting on my face, that was the limit. But also, I was having symptoms with my kidneys and my liver and just felt so terrible. I'm pretty good with words, and words fall short to describe how terrible you feel after years of high potency abuse of this stuff. That yeah, I hit the wall, and my life was falling apart, and relationships falling apart, and pushed everybody out of my life, and my business, I was burnt out on that. And I just work with dogs, and so it's a pretty fun and simple experience day to day, and just everything sucked all the time. And yeah, I just woke up one day and realized it's time to do that. And so I scheduled a 2-week vacation to get it out of my system, not taking into account just how severe it was going to be. And it took every single moment of those 2 weeks to withdraw. And it was severe, acute for over 12 days of that.
So you did a cold turkey.
Yeah, I mean, being the, again, I'll use the term biohacker because I don't have a better one. Like I had a just apothecary of things, like a pharmacy of both actual pharmaceuticals, but also just every supplement you could imagine at home. But being as though I went on vacation and went to Utah, those kinds of things, even cannabis, not available in that kind of a place. And I didn't bring anything with me because I really underestimated how bad it was going to be to ride it out without any kind of help or intervention or doctor oversight. I went out with a partner at the time, and I told her, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. I will tell you there will be a few days that will be bad. And by day 12 to still be just bedridden, suffering, just trembling, shaking, akathisia, if you're familiar with that withdrawal symptom, just horse kicking in bed to the point that I thought my back was going to break, to experience that for 12 days straight. If you're sick for 3 days in a row, by day 2 or 3, you feel like, is this just how I'm going to be now? And you extend that out to 10 or 11 days. And it almost felt like I was not sure that I was going to come through, or that this was going to be how I am now. And then from her sake, to watch somebody that you care about suffer day in and day out, no sleep. Like, we're talking maybe fall asleep for 5-10 minutes at a time, to watch somebody go through that. And then from me to have to watch her watch me go through that. There was a psychological aspect that I never anticipated could be so brutal, to both suffer and then have to have somebody else endure watching that suffering. It was rough. It was rough.
I can imagine, like 12 days, it sounds like.
Yeah, 12 days with just completely unrelenting. Like, there might be like a window of 10 minutes where towards the end where things start to feel that they're getting better, and then you crash again, and we're talking barely able to walk, barely able to get out of bed. Fortunately, I recorded some videos during that time so I could kind of track whether it's progress or just to be clear about what withdrawing from this is really like. I wish I had done more, like a day to day, but I recorded one on day 1 and on day 5, and then I was able to like drive to the next state over and get some CBD and record what it was like to take 500 times the recommended dosage of CBD and see what kind of alleviation of symptoms that would do. Yeah, 12 days in a row of nonstop suffering. I referred to it as just the closest thing to torture that I could imagine that didn't include physical harm, you know?
Yeah. And this was just from like leaf matter powder?
No, it was concentrates. That what I never had from 2016 to 2020, I never increased my dosage. It was just here and there. There was never ever any sense of dependency. I never had an issue with it, which is why I thought that the horror stories that I heard were exaggeration. Something else was going on. All the things that you see on any given forum on the internet day to day. I always joke around that the people making all these comments are not reliant, and I get that, or they don't have experience themselves, or they're in their addiction. They don't want somebody to talk bad about the thing that they need every single day. But no, everything changed once I started taking concentrated version of it, and I felt a little bamboozled by it, because I'm no slouch in that I know about stuff. I know about mind-altering chemicals. I know about substances. I didn't just go in. I didn't enter blindly. Like, I knew about the stuff, but I just had no idea when someone says concentrates, just how much more concentrated it is, and how severe the withdrawal symptoms are going to be from something that is, whether it's 50, 100, 200 times more potent than just the leaf itself. So no, concentrates created the problem.
Yeah, they're so potent. How much concentrates were you doing?
So I was taking it in a liquid form, and it was about, they came in bottles, so it was about 8 to 10 a day at the max. And early on in this particular product, like, there were no kinds of warning labels or anything like that. And it certainly got to the point through litigation that they were mandated to put, max quantities over X amount of time on the bottles. But early on, I was just excited that I could keep taking the stuff that I had been taking without having to make it myself. And it was available at a produce stand in my little town in Northern California, which somehow made it seem a little more innocuous, that if I just, go down to the produce stand and get my fruits and veggies and a little something or other to add to it, that was part of what seemed benign about it, that it just looked like an energy drink.
So you did no tapering. You just went like cold turkey off of 10.
No, I did. I most certainly tapered and weaned. It had gotten so bad. I was living in a big house in Sonoma, California, and it got so bad that I was writing on my bathroom mirror my tapering schedule, as far as, like, it just looked like a crazy person. If you've seen that meme with Charlie and Sunny in Philadelphia down in the mailroom, just red strings attached to everything, that's what my bedroom or my bathroom looked like. I was just scrawling tapering schedules and trying to extend the time out, and using a plastic syringe so I could measure the amount per time. And so no, there was like a pre-tapering before I went on that vacation. And then while on that vacation, not realizing the severity of what withdrawals were going to be like, the first thing I did is go out on a very long hike and intentionally leave everything in the car. And at one point I'm 2.5 hours away from the car. It's 90 degrees outside, and those withdrawal symptoms start coming on fast. And I realize that I'm 2 hours away from, whether you want to call my next fix or whatever, that I've left that in the car. And it took many, many hours to get from as far out as I ended up back to the vehicle, taking breaks about every 100 feet and finding shade. And I tried to do what looked to me as a smart thing by keeping the stuff away from me, and then ended up just deserted on an island in the most beautiful place imaginable that I couldn't possibly enjoy because I was in complete and severe acute withdrawal hours from the vehicle.
Wow. Crazy that withdrawal hit so fast.
Yeah, it was about every 3 hours or so. If I didn't have, I had to have it on my nightstand overnight. I remember the first time that I drank it at the end of the night in order to sleep. And even in that moment, it's like, it used to be something in the morning and in the afternoon, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the first time that I drank it at the end of the night in order to go to sleep, they're not really conscious decisions that you make when you're entering withdrawals like that your body realizes something's not quite right. And I do remember drinking it at the end of the night and thinking, holy shit, I think I'm in the upside down here, that I think I am on the wrong side of this experience. If once it was the thing that I had in the morning for energy, and now it's the thing that I have to take at the end of the night in order to sleep, and then keep continuing to take it after that whether it was being naive or oblivious, it's irrelevant that it got to the point that had to have one overnight and had to have one first thing in the morning, or else it was absolute hell.
Yeah, it becomes a prison.
Yep. Yeah, very much.
For sure. So what does your supported sobriety look like now?
Well, for 2 years, it was very much alone. That people ask me all the time after that experience, and then the rise in popularity from 2000 to 2022. Well, back up a bit, that after that experience, I felt I needed to do something drastic, because after that severe of an experience, it was on my 39th birthday that I was in those withdrawals, and it feels like you're going to die. And so landing on the other side of that, I felt like I needed to make a drastic move, and I ended up moving out to Austin, Texas, to do some music stuff and pursue some creative endeavors that I'd always wanted to. But when you come that close to feeling like you're going to die, that it does create a shift and a change in you. But back then, it just, so few people know about it. Not that many now, but so few even then, that I didn't really tell anybody about it. One person close to me, but it seemed very silly, and it seemed kind of foolish to get hooked on something that's marketed as an energy drink like that nobody really understood. And so it was very much going it alone. And then in 2022, again, after moving out to Austin, it's everywhere. The product in particular that I got hooked on, it is omnipresent in Austin. And people always ask me am I tempted to see it? So prevalent everywhere. And absolutely not. Not for a moment did I ever think, let's give that another whirl. It was just so brutal to have gone through that experience that I would see it everywhere. And all I would do, I would talk to people about it, that, hey, just so you know, this was my experience. Do what you want to do. But just so you know, this is a potential outcome if you continue to do this. But then in 2024, so just about 6 months back, just a down moment, a down day, combined with reaching that 2-year soberversary, where you do the same thing that has become a cliche with things like alcohol, that I convinced myself, it's been 2 years, you've earned one, you deserve one, you can have just one. And I went to a little market by where I was working at the time, and the clerk behind the counter knew my entire story and tried to get the product removed from the shop that I had told him about, that I had my experience with. And I went right back to that very same kid, and I'm like, all right, dude, I'm ready. Let's set me up with some poison. And And he thought I was joking. And I'm like, listen, man, I appreciate that you don't want to sell it to me. The place across the street has it. I'm going to get it. So just, fork it over. Then I fell just immediately right back into a habit. And it was at that point that there's a WhatsApp group of support folks for this particular product that reached out to me to say, hey, we've seen your videos on Instagram. I've seen your videos on YouTube. We'd like you to come join this group with us. And timing being what it is, I said, well, buddy, I'm right back in the shit. So yeah, let's enter this group. So long as anybody that knows me from all of this strength and courage that you've seen or heard so much about, I'm right back where I started. And so primarily right now, it's this WhatsApp group that has some of the most lovely, understanding people in it that I could ever imagine. And I would have never thought that a virtual digital group like that could have an impact like it does. And that's where we come back to addiction generally is so alienating. Yes, but with any other substance of cultural understanding, we know what we're signing on for. You want to smoke some meth? Do it. You know what the risk is. You want to drink until you're face down somewhere? You know where that ends. You want to take pills? Sure. You know what you're signing on for. So having an entire group of people that all fell into this trap with this particular substance, that I underestimated how meaningful it would be to have people that you don't have to explain how silly you feel or how foolish it was. Everybody in that group understands, is currently experiencing it themselves or have in the past. And that right now, there's hundreds and hundreds of messages a day that we're all sharing amongst each other. And it goes from, how's your day? What are you up to? Look what I'm doing. And then as soon as someone comes in and says, I'm struggling, I just got here, then you see the whole entire chat flip to support and understanding and what can we do to help. And so it's this place where that thing we do, which is hide and avoid and feel shame, that none of that is necessary in this little group. And for anyone that's had this experience in any sort of a group, like it sounds cliche and I'm preaching to the choir, but it really, really helps to have some people around you, even digitally, that know exactly what you've gone through. And so it's just this little group of people. There's 208 of us in the group. There was about 80 when I joined it, but just a beautiful group of people that support each other through this experience.
Yeah, I have to say I've been in a lot of recovery communities and lots of AA, and the quitting kratom community and all the facets of it have been top notch. So good. So supportive, so wonderful and lovely. And
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm in a couple of those, and there's only one stands out as just way more connected. Because there's another one that I'm in where it's a lot of people who are closely related to somebody who had this experience, and for a lot of them, family members and parents of people that have died from overdosing on mitragynine, or however you pronounce it, toxicity from that mitragynine. Yeah, that every day it's more just trying to get it banned and trying to get some amount of oversight. And of course, that's all valid, but it's different than the experience that we're having in our little WhatsApp group, because we're just trying to support each other in any way possible. It's a little closer to home than just the anger, which is, again, totally valid. And a lot of people enter that way, wanting vengeance, feeling very angry, wanting somebody to be punished for it. And I went through that experience myself, but at a certain point, we also have to take, for those of us that got addicted ourselves, there's a responsibility that is necessary to be looked at. All right, so it would be nice that there be some oversight and cultural understanding here, but I also have to look at where my role is in all of this. And yeah, it really helps to have a group of people that understand that side of it too.
Absolutely. So this second relapse, this most recent relapse in 2024, did you have to go through the same 12-day withdrawal?
No, because this specific product, when it first came out, it would be hard to measure, but I would say 2 to 3 times more potent than it is now. And so it was just a way more potent thing when I came off of it that first time. And honestly, my addiction was so bad in it that food took a complete backseat to it, hence the losing 30 or 40 pounds. But it was like that was all that was in my body. This version of it takes about 3 days of pretty unpleasant symptoms that are a little bit physical, but it's way more mental and psychological, this version of it. And so, I didn't get up to 8 or 10 bottles. It got up to about 3 or 4 for this one. And then there's just this bodily anxiety that emanates from the pit of your stomach that is very common with this version of it. And there's still a malaise and exhaustion, like a hopelessness that comes with this one, as would be expected of just about any addiction that you're coming out of, that as your body re-regulates, there is a process that your body just has to go through. But this one, no, about 3 to 5 days of discomfort and weakness and unpleasant thoughts and all of that, and then things start to get a little bit better. And I worked all the way through, as in had a job and worked through this one, whereas there wouldn't have been a chance in hell that I could have interfaced with the public on the last one. And so, no, just a few days, and it really helped to have some people to talk to about it during, that kind of keep you accountable and keep you honest. Or if you have a slip up, they're there to tell you that, yeah, that's a part of it. That's a part of it. It's not a straight line.
So very different experiences, it sounds like. Completely. Were there any like supplements or anything helpful?
Yeah, I used in the first one, not particularly, because I didn't have my supplements with me and didn't know what I know now, which is through this group, I have been compiling all of the things that people have used to alleviate their withdrawal symptoms into a list in order to share with people in the future. And anytime we get another 10 new people in the group, that I share that list with them. And so everything from some prescription stuff to things that you can get anywhere. Some kava was recommended to me, which is actually in the formula of the thing that I got addicted to, but it just doesn't have the same addictive qualities that the kratom has in it. And so that I used a little bit during this. But yeah, there's a whole long list that I almost intentionally don't remember, because I know that I can consult my list anytime. But high dose vitamin C is something that is commonly used. I did not use that. I took my vitamins, I exercised. I got the most benefit from sauna and cold plunge, cold showers, exercise, going for a walk, any amount of movement, interacting with people, even though that feels overwhelming. I found if you can get immersed in any sort of thing that takes you out of being stuck in your own head, that you get a little break from it all. But this round, the most useful thing for me was getting in the sauna and getting in the cold plunge. And both of those things, especially the cold plunge, sound impossible when you feel that way. It's like your willpower is low, your discipline is low, but if you can just do it anyway, you get this little brief reprieve that might be 15 minutes, a half hour, an hour, to get some momentum and even a sense of feeling good again. That as your brain re-regulates from this stuff, you lose sight of that I'll ever feel good again. And it's a really fucking hopeless feeling to have, to wonder if you'll ever feel good again, because you can't keep taking that thing, and that that if you don't, there's going to be a time where you feel like dog shit. And as one of our members, Rami, says in the group, that you got to pay the piper. I mean, we've heard it 1,000 times that if you use something to get up in some sort of a way, there will be a downside to it. There is no way around that. There will be some unpleasant feelings associated with this withdrawal, and to escape that entirely would also diminish the suffering necessary to ensure that you don't end up in that same position again. And that's a conversation I try to have with people, that embrace the suffering, as cliche as it may be. If you suffer for days on end, your likelihood and desire to want to go back to that thing will be less, I assure you. And that if you can just take that on the chin and use that as fuel to never put yourself in that position again, you'll be surprised how meaningful it will become to allow suffering to be what it is. But there is this desire to want to escape the unpleasantness of the withdrawal, but it's a really meaningful experience. And in my first one, I refer to it as spiritual. To have suffered that much for that long, you come out on the other side of it, and you just never knew that you could move through something so brutal. And it's something to be proud of, that you can endure so much more difficulty than you thought that you could is something that I think people should know about themselves. And so there's no way to escape the unpleasantness, but there are some ways to make it a little less unpleasant.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember having people be like, you should cold plunge and you should walk. And like, I don't want to do that. And I don't believe it's going to help me, but actually being the most beneficial, just like moving through it, like literally just like moving your body through it in whatever way that works for you it was so important to me.
Yeah, like embracing the suffering and moving through it. There are so many of these phrases that have been so overused and so worn out and feel so cliche. It doesn't feel that way when you're in it. I have gotten somewhat tired of hearing it spewed on Instagram and YouTube just daily from all of these people, to the point where it's almost like the bottom falls out of this language around it. But when you're in the middle of a process like that, yeah, it all works, and I suppose it's cliche for a reason, because it always works as long as you're willing to put in that time and willing to put in that effort. Another one was a float tank. If you're familiar with floating in just heinously concentrated bath salts, I mean, that's got a whole other meaning to it. But yeah, that was really, really helpful. That even if you can't relax in there, you're still going to soak up the magnesium in it, and it's going to give you a little bit of a break and a reprieve from it as well, a little window of feeling okay again.
Yeah, magnesium is so important, but the float, I could see that being like a place to feel comfortable in the discomfort.
Yeah. To take away all distractions and all other variables and just exist, that all you can do is sit there with your suffering. That's and deal with some potential claustrophobia. Yeah, sure. But then you strip away everything else, and all you have is you and how you feel. You can learn something from that.
What is your life like today, kratom free?
Well, having been more or less an addict for decades, I use the term non-reliant. There's just sobriety has a certain connotation that I don't particularly. I use the term non-reliant, so certainly I don't take kratom at all anymore, but never at any point during any of the last 20 years was I non-functional. I've had my own business for the last 10 years. I've never not been able to get my shit done, but yeah, everything's just better now, to not be reliant on any sort of a substance, to just be a human being and get through the day. That's where, in any of my past of requiring substance to do things like eat or sleep or go out or do anything, that there is a clarity with that means that when unpleasant feelings come up, that you have the clarity of mind to also be responsible for how to navigate that. And one thing I really underestimated in sobriety is that I thought that was the hard part, to get sober. And of course it's hard. Of course it is. But what I had to face was, if I hadn't been sober since I was 18 years old, well, then I had to deal with, what 23 years ago were you feeling that made you feel like, I can't do this with just the chemicals of the regular human body? That I had to start looking at, whether it's a particular thing that happens in life or a feeling that drags out for X amount of time. Why is it that I need to spend a couple years escaping that until everything falls apart, and then I have to pull myself out of the clutches of hell, or that I've backed myself into a corner that now I have to claw my way out? That's been the hard part for me, is that to look at, why is it that I've leaned on anything to escape when things got hard? And it's like so many people, because I'm sensitive, like so many people are. It's because sometimes it hurts, and it hurts a lot, and that hurt becomes more than I can tolerate, and I would like to hide from that for a bit. But I have not found that to lead anywhere but to a place that's worse. And so making sure that I stay on my exercise and continue sauning, and I play sports, and so doing all that and being involved in community and all that, it's made it a lot easier to do all that. But it's just, for me, making sure that I have the parts of life that are necessary to remain on the righteous path, which includes, like making things better with my family, making sure I have friends around, and not just acquaintances or distant friends, but friends, those close ones, where you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to pretend that you're feeling better than you are. You can just admit the truth of whatever's going on. That being sober of mind now for years on end, that it provides a clarity and a strength that I didn't know was available to me, because it was always just kind of masked in some sort of fog of, well, I can always just go hide in a substance. And so, yeah, it's still hard because life is hard and adulthood is hard. But knowing that I have better tools in my tool belt has made it a little more, at least understandable, how to navigate the feelings that push me in the direction of addiction.
Beautiful. Sounds like you're really like doing the work to understand yourself and prevent that from happening again, and creating community and support and friends. And I think that's really what it's all about, is like,
Yeah.
Connection is the opposite of addiction.
Yeah. Johan Hari.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and working with dogs really helps.
Oh.
There is something about them where I have 4 dogs myself, but there is a certain amount of presence and emotional regulation that is a necessity when you work with dogs. And for the last 12 years, I've worked with dogs, and even at my worst of times, I was able to still do that. But you get a little bit worse if you're masking your emotions and feeling some kind of way about a lot of things, that you just end up kind of a little more easily frustrated and volatile if you're in your addiction. And dogs don't respond to that. And so I've noticed, even when I started working with dogs, that having the leverage that I need to be better, not just for myself, but also because it's my work and because I have a responsibility to these animals, that is something that I've really leveraged in this, to not just be myself for the sake of me and my family and everyone around me, but because that's what these animals need. And it's not like they know that you're addicted to something. They don't have that kind of capacity, but they certainly know if you're not your usual self. And so using them as a leverage to maintain this is something that I've certainly taken to heart.
Yeah, I find animals to be like really incredible mirrors and healers too. Yeah, so
yeah, big time.
So important to me. Do you have like a favorite music or band that you like to listen to now that you're not dimmed down?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I would call it a person or a group, but Big Wild, there's an album called Super Dream that completely changed my life and opened my mind to electronic music a little bit more. I was born in 83, so electronic music of the 2000s was just like a lot of house and trance and that sort of stuff, and that didn't really vibe with me. But electronic music done beautifully is something that has really helped through this process. Vandalux and Ben Bomer and Big Wild that take electronic music but do it in a way that is just full of emotion and full of feeling. And I dance a lot and move a lot. And so making sure that I have just this high vibration kind of music around me that, takes you through an emotional experience like music does generally. But that has been something, those groups in particular have been something that really touched me in a way that is more than I think a lot of people would come to expect from electronic music, because it's not just thumping bass and obnoxious club music. It's not that. It's things that just seem to appeal to my brain and how my brain works. I mean, I make music myself, and so I use that as inspiration to learn about a side of music that is almost a totally new genre for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you experienced this, but I found myself not listening to like any music. It would not hit the same. And I know that that's an experience a lot of our listeners have too. So
of course,
we always like to ask about how music re-enters your life.
Oh, yeah. Creativity and expression of emotions are some of the first things to go when you're locked into an ugly cycle. And that for a lot of people in the group and people that I know that have had this experience, that when creativity starts re-entering and that art studio that they have in their home that is covered in dust and cobwebs, when they walk back into that place of sober mind, all of a sudden, a lot of feelings start to re-enter the body, but there's also like a shame, like I let you down, you creative endeavor. I let you down during this time, but also it's a path out. It's a path out big time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm wondering, is there any questions that you wished I'd asked you or anything else that you want to go into?
No, I mean, off the top of my head, no. Like I said, I've been talking about this stuff for years. So any opportunity that I can get to do it again and maybe, get a few more people to hear it, I'll take that opportunity. So I appreciate that from you. This product, Kratom in particular, is just, the word we use in the group is just, it's insidious is what it is that there's a brutality of the experience that is really underestimated. And my opinion is that it's all going to get worse before it gets better. And I've been saying that for years, that until or unless, whether it's a rich person, a famous person, a child of somebody like that ends up being harmed in the way that so many of us have, I don't foresee much changing. And my opinion on that is that, like, it's not something that I wish to be illegal. I know that there are plenty of people that have used it in a harm reduction version, and I know that I personally had no issues with it for years. And so I am not an advocate for removing it from the world. It's just that if there were a broader cultural understanding and some sort of oversight and regulation as far as dosages and expectation of what is possible on this, that's all I'm going for, is that I want the truth to be known about, yes, people have used it to get off of, whether it's alcohol, opiates, benzodiazepines, any of that, then I would never want somebody to not have that available to them. Because I have heard wonderful things from a harm reduction standpoint, but people need to know that there is a subset of people, that some that never once had an issue with addiction. They were not drawn in by alcohol or substances their whole life, that took the product that I got stuck on because their advertising suggests that it's a safe alternative to all of those things. And they ended up in the same position as all of us have, and with a way more naive mindset, not realizing what addiction means, what's it like, how hopeless and brutal the experience is. That I just want people to know that there is a really unpleasant version of this when you start dabbling in concentrates and higher dosages, that I would estimate tens of thousands of people across this country, and even hundreds potentially of thousands of people. I mean, I shoot low with the tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands sounds insane, but when I see, whether it's YouTube videos or Facebook comments about this stuff, that people are deep in it and taking heinous amounts of it, the medical system also doesn't really know how to manage and navigate withdrawals from this, because it's just too new. And so we're all learning a lot. And for me in particular, the single thing that worked the most, I want to get this out, that was most effective for me, that actually allowed me to sleep, was taking 1,000 milligrams of intravenous NAD. That I took that on day 11, and it was the first time I actually got some sleep. And that the nurse that administered it says that that's primarily what she uses it for, not kratom specifically, but for long-term drug abuse, because it doesn't just give you a brief window of feeling better. It seems to heal cellularly from the inside out. And the biggest issue that she's run into is going to AA or NA groups and be seen as somebody that's off because it comes in an IV, that she has just been ousted from so many of these groups, being accused of just bringing another drug to these people, and not realizing that this is something that heals your body from the inside out. And so I want people to know that I did that. I don't know how helpful it would be on day one when you're still in extreme withdrawals. I don't know about that.
It's supposed to be really, really effective, especially in IV, but the doses required for alleviating withdrawal symptoms are very, very expensive, like upwards of like $800, $1,200 a session, and you would need one every day. They do like NAD detoxes where you can like go to a treatment center for NAD and just have NAD like every day.
Yeah, as I came to understand it, I don't know how beneficial it would be to do every day, as much as I was led to believe that there's a certain amount of, whether it's a couple weeks before you would do your next one. I don't know enough to say yes or no on that, but once a month was the protocol that this gal in particular was using for, we're talking decades long amphetamine addicts that were now 50, 60 years old, that now feel, after maybe 6, 7, 10 months of just doing it once a month, that they feel better than they ever had. And that there's a hopefulness on that side, because for a lot of people, decades of amphetamine abuse is not something that you're ever going to recover from. And it was expensive. It was, it's generally about $1 a milligram, but it's really hard to put a price on your wellness, your sanity, your sobriety. And so, yeah, I guess I would want to get that out there, that I don't make any money from talking about it. It's just what I used, and it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I was going to ask you if you had one tip for quitting, what would it be? So
yeah. And NAD gave me my first, I slept maybe for 4 hours or so on day 11, but it was just the start of some hope on the other side of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Noah. I really appreciate it. It's been really lovely talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Kratom in the headlines. Hey Kratom Quitters, it's Jacob again with another Kratom in the Headline segment. Our segment this week is from the Phoenix New Times, and the title of the article is "His Wife Died After Using Kratom. He's Suing the Company That Sold It," and this is from August 20th, 2024. The article starts out saying, "Viable Solutions markets Kratom products as an herbal supplement. This Gilbert man says the drug killed his wife." I believe Gilbert is near Phoenix, Arizona. For context, the article talks about how one Sunday morning in September of 2022, so 2 years ago, a man, Colin Logan, woke up at his desk. He'd been up most of the night studying for his cybersecurity certification. So he made his way to the bedroom to check on his wife of 4 years, and that's when he found her dead in bed. It was almost 2 years later at the writing of this article, and it's now been 2 years, and he's just really only been able to put together bits and pieces of what happened that day. They talk about how the couple had been in each other's lives since they were teenagers, turning a friendship into a romance, and then eventually getting married in 2018. They also talk about how the autopsy revealed that Piney died of mitragynine or mitragynine toxicity, and that happens to be the main ingredient in kratom, which is a legal substance that she had ingested and been using for years to combat her anxiety. Notes that it's unregulated by the FDA, and notes that the company that she purchased it from is based in Idaho, and their marketing materials showcase the substance in wooden bowls, really showing it like a gift or a substance to be revered. So for 3 years, she drank it like tea, essentially, and according to the wrongful death lawsuit that was filed, essentially they accuse the company as misleading the highly addictive and dangerous drug and marketing it as a safe herbal remedy. And as a result of that, they claim that this woman became dependent on kratom, and it was ultimately what led to her death. They talk about how, again, the substance is legal and unregulated in Arizona, that there is a disclaimer about kratom on this company's website where the woman purchased this and has a botanical facts, images, and a few other things. The company did decline to comment on the article for what it's worth. And the journalist does go on to say that the degree that kratom presents from a danger perspective is really difficult to know. There's limited clinical trial data, limited tests have been conducted on humans, and little is really known about the drug safety or health benefits. Also, that there's a lot of people using it, as you all know, and it produces both opioid and stimulant-like effects depending on your dose and whatnot. Experts estimate that somewhere between 5 million and 20 million Americans are using kratom each year, and it's a mix of recreational and medicinal and or recovery usage. So this is article's probably about, I would say, a 10-minute read, maybe 5-10 minute read, so not too long. It does just continue to highlight the risk of kratom and the fact that while rare, there are people that do end up suffering significant health consequences and even death as a result of their kratom use and addiction. And more and more people are using it, as you all know. So we just have to be diligent and support one another. And I think, that's all we can do. And that is kratom in the headlines for this week. I wish you all a wonderful week.
Hi, everyone. This is Jasmine, and I'm here to give you your resource of the week. Today, we're talking about a specific resource from Eleanor Health, and it's an article titled, "How Addictive is Kratom?" The article begins by explaining exactly what kratom is, and that the main component, mitragynine, contributes to the mind-altering effects, and depending on the area and season of growth of the kratom leaf, it can be 13 times stronger than morphine. The article describes kratom as having similar effects to that of opioids and stimulants that are dose-dependent. Although a lot of individuals use kratom as a form of self-medication to relieve chronic pain and opioid withdrawals, the article describes that no well-controlled experimental trials have been conducted to date to demonstrate kratom's usefulness for opioid withdrawals or any other health conditions. The article describes the side effects of kratom being severe weight loss, insomnia, bone pain, loss of appetite, vomiting, hallucinations, and more. Because kratom interacts with the opioid receptors, it can also produce decreased anxiety, pain relief, stimulant-like effects that include increased energy and alertness, increased sociability, and heightened libido. When the article proposes the question of if kratom is addictive, it states that when used to combat opioid disorder, it is extremely addictive, causing symptoms of opioid withdrawal. Some of these symptoms include jerky movements, runny nose, muscle aches, blurred vision, cramps, nausea, and vomiting, sweats, depression, etc. It also mentions that post-acute withdrawals can occur within weeks or even months after detoxing from kratom. The article briefly talks about kratom overdoses and that there have recently been a number of deaths related to kratom usage. When asking yourself if you are addicted to kratom, some of the signs are experiencing cravings, larger dose requirements to feel similar effects, changes in mood, financial issues due to kratom purchases, losing interest in activities that you previously really enjoyed, and so on. Lastly, the article talks about detoxing from kratom, and that is highly recommended to detox under some sort of supervision, as withdrawal symptoms can be really severe. The risk of relapse can also be reduced by building a strong support network, participating in meaningful activities, and learning healthy habits. The article also offers a link to contact Eleanor Health if you are personally struggling with kratom addiction or really any other form of substance abuse. And the states that Eleanor Health services are Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and Washington. And this is specifically for kratom addiction as well. That concludes our Resource of the Week segment. Keep it kratom free.